and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup.
And as the Democratic race for the nomination for president heats up...
or stumbles along.
We've got to give them hope. Mike Bloomberg...
They've got to give us hope.
But Mike Bloomberg this week, you will know more because you watched the debate, but really stumbled in talking about transgender people just a couple of years ago.
Not in the debate. We're talking about, yes, his previous statements. We don't know what happened in the debate because, as always, we are recording on Wednesday afternoon, so you'll be ahead of us, but we'll catch up eventually.
With you.
Meanwhile, Pete Buttigieg, as you know, had a little run-in with Rush Limbaugh, and then Trump got quoted by Limbaugh, and that's all very interesting, so we'll bring you updates on that.
And we'll get into how the National Boy Scouts of America have filed for bankruptcy, given all the abuse suits that have piled up going back to 1920.
Another attempt to avoid responsibility with an interesting gay angle. We will report on legislative wins in the last week in Virginia and the ever-improving Oklahoma.
Mary Griffith, who became a passionate activist for LGBT rights after her son took his own life in 1983, has died.
And in the violence report this week, another anti-LGBT shooting in Miami. Nobody dead, but not a pretty situation.
Somebody in critical. A new study says that same-sex partners are more satisfied in their relationships than heterosexual ones.
Imagine that. That is not a recruitment poster, just the facts. Another gay dating app bites the dust in spite of that news about partners.
And Rosario Dawson has come out as LGBTQ.
With some nuances there.
All right.
You know her as the girlfriend of Cory Booker.
You know Mike Bloomberg as the Republican mayor of New York.
For 12 years.
Look, there is this endless debate. We're all having it. I mean, who's the one who can beat Trump? I mean, he's got all the money. He can stand up to him, blah, 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 blah.
Do we go for who can beat Trump, we think, or do we go for values? What's going to win? Who knows?
Well, I mean, when you think of the way Trump beat Hillary, a lot of it was his supporters bringing up her bad things to the left and to African Americans. And that drained off enough support for her to lose in some of the swing states.
They suppressed the vote in various ways.
So with Bloomberg, boy, has he given us a whole smorgasbord of things to attack him on from the left. Terrible things in terms of race, sexuality, women, LGBT, etc. So I worry about him being the candidate for the Democratic Party.
Well, the only reason that may not be as important is that Trump outdoes him on all those counts. Not that it won't stop Trump from attacking him.
Because Trump will hold on to his racist base to the bitter end. They will never abandon him.
But will the left stay home again, or will they say, we learned our lesson, we have to get rid of this monster, we really would vote for a potted plant, and that includes Mike Bloomberg.
Well, I'd vote for Beavis and Butthead over Trump and Pence.
And you'd vote for Bloomberg over Trump in spite of...
And it would be the end of the Democratic Party.
Well, I don't think the Democratic Party would be improved by the re-election of Donald Trump. Look, we both lived through 12 years of Mike Bloomberg as mayor. We hated every minute of it. My overall assessment was he is not a man of the people. His decisions are all made in favor of the hierarchy, in favor of the 1%, and he was extremely arrogant and dismissive of the people. Therefore, the real estate industry got all the perks, and the people were deprived of decent housing or a living wage or whatever. He certainly cut up slices like LGBT people when he vetoed pro-LGBT bills, blocked marriage equality for a while, even though he
for
claims
6 years.
Claims credit for inventing it here.
Again, to repeat this, he was given a court order by a judge in New York. You've got to start issuing the licenses. Every Democrat who was running against him that year said, we accept this immediately. And he appealed it, and he cited Leviticus in the briefs, and he won. And that stopped it for 6 years. And yes, eventually he got on board and started pushing for it. But 6 years later, I had friends who couldn't get married, and they died.
And we believe in redemption. We believe in second chances. But don't go out and claim that you invented marriage equality in New York when you blocked it for 6 years, and when you prevented corporations doing business with the city from being required to give same-sex partner benefits. You vetoed that bill.
Now, in fairness, when he came in, he promised, when he was first elected in 2001, he came in 2002, the city council passed a transgender rights bill, and he had promised to sign it, and he did. But just 2 years ago, speaking at Oxford, he gives this long rant about, let me just read the operative quote. If you want to know if somebody's a good salesman, give them the job of going to the Midwest and picking a town and selling to that town the concept of some man wearing a dress should be in a locker room with their daughter. If you can sell that, you can sell anything. And then he goes on to say, look, here's what we did in the prisons. You pull their pants down, you see what they are, you go this way, you go that way. This is the way he spoke about it.
Well, this is the way he talks about people. And our concern, we're thrilled that he signed the trans rights bill. That's great. And he's making a lot of more lefty statements these days in his run. And he's certainly
I wouldn't call them lefty. They're more moderately progressive, if you've read them closely.
More progressive than he has been, which is a low bar, but he is. And we certainly applaud his concerns about public health and climate change and gun violence and all of that.
I've come up with a slogan for Mike. Vote for Mike Bloomberg. He's nothing like Mike Bloomberg. Which is basically he's having to run away from 90% of his positions.
We are stuck in a conundrum with all these candidates because they all have such deep flaws.
And when you see these LGBT people and black leaders and all these things, they've been bought. I mean, the mayor of Washington was given a $4 million grant for schools from Bloomberg, and so she's on his side.
And and that's why some people are on Trump's side, because he's given them things. It is a universal system.
And the exposure of his sexist activities as
old news, but real news. It's just an ongoing record on his part of contempt for any kind of progressive discussion about people or people's rights. Forget that. Why? It's a losing proposition to be too leftist. Why would you think that you could go after that? So he doesn't appear to be someone who's going to fight for those positions. He's more likely to accept a very centrist to right center point of view on all of these things. Why wouldn't you want universal real estate development all over the city?
Why would more billionaires?
And why would you worry about tearing down houses that people are living in when you can build these skyscrapers?
So as you might gather, we don't like him and we know him.
But we would vote for him.
Over Trump.
Yes.
I hope it doesn't come to that, and it won't come to that if you support people say, oh, Bernie's, I haven't endorsed a candidate. They say, oh, Bernie, he's not a real Democrat. But he's never supported a Republican, and he caucuses with Democrats in the Senate. And we've got to win the Senate as well. And Bloomberg recently has contributed to keeping the Senate in Republican hands, because he liked Pat Toomey in Pennsylvania, because he was okay on guns. And so he gave him like $10 million. And so that's keeping them. We can't do anything without the Senate becoming in Democratic hands.
Now, I must say, though, that the stupidest Drudge Report rumor of the week was that Bloomberg would run with Hillary as his vice presidential candidate.
You can call it stupid, but we know someone who was polled about vice presidential candidates one of them. He was a close friend of ours. He got a 20-minute call from the Bloomberg people about Muriel Bowser as a running mate. And I'm sure that this story...
The African-American mayor of Washington, D.C.
Right. So this story emerged out of, I think, that people were getting field tested about names, and they did not deny it. So you can call it stupid.
I think it is a stupid idea.
Oh, okay, yes. Well,
yes, that's all I'm saying.
Stranger things have happened. Donald Trump is president.
But what I did do
is the vice president of the United States, a failing governor of Indiana, who couldn't have gotten reelected that year.
Surrealism in everyday life. So I looked at, because our friend Rex Walkner sent around links this week, I looked at all the LGBTQ plus platforms of the Democratic candidates. I read them all. All. Half a dozen of them that he linked to. Far and away the best, Pete Buttigieg. 17 pages of comprehensive, nuanced platform positions on any issue you could possibly think of raising.
What does it say about his record as mayor of South Bend, where he has had some power?
It says some, but it's mostly prospective, as are all of them. So that I ranked them in order. Here's my ranking.
Okay, here we go.
Nobody else has 17 pages, but the next most comprehensive is Elizabeth Warren.
Let's not be size queens here.
Why not? We want in
detail.
Yeah. And hers is detailed and lengthy and thoughtful and appropriate. All of the platform proposals were good.
Yeah.
Some were more thoughtful and extensive than others. So Pete first, Warren second, Amy Klobuchar I thought had the third best and third most comprehensive, and Bernie, Biden, and Bloomberg, I thought were all in the second half of the list with more perfunctory proposals.
And yet, Biden, who I'm not crazy about and probably is finished by the time you see this show, is the guy who pushed Obama over the edge on same-sex marriage and came out for it beforehand.
Accident.
We love those accidents.
Well, fine, but I'm not giving him credit for
it. And, Bernie Sanders came out for same-sex relationships way back in the 20th century.
I'm just talking. Look, I don't think the candidates.
Record means a lot to me. That you've been for these things all your life, or for et cetera.
Yes, and frankly, I do trust all of these people to be on some range of very good on our issues. But I'm looking at. What I take these as an indication of? Who is your staff? Who is writing about these things? Who's thinking these things? Because these candidates are not sitting around and writing these platforms.
Yes, I remember Teddy Kennedy going, this is in Randy Schultz's book, he goes up to, who was the big activist in San Francisco?
Cleve?
No. A political operative. And he says, what are we supposed to call you people now? Which is a good question to ask a political operative so you don't get it wrong.
Yeah, I remember Charlie Rose asking me on the air one night, what is it you people want? RESPECT, Charlie. Find out what it means to me. Again, they're all very decent, but when I read these platforms, what I see is who's got the best advice, who's got the best advisors and thinkers who are putting together these platforms, who care enough about our issues to spend some time really doing a deep dive on it.
And we're not hearing a lot about LGBTQ issues. I hope you heard about it in the debate that's happening tonight as we tape.
I'm not surprised. Well, except that people are now going after Bloomberg on the trans stuff. So my prediction, not having seen the debate, is that will come up. Probably in a stupid question from Chuck Todd. Just a guess.
Oh, please. I was sad to see him up there. So, all right. Oh, wait.
But meanwhile, the gays there's Queers Against Pete You know about that?
Yes, they picketed him or disrupted a fundraiser that he was having in
San Francisco.
Yes, he did. And
there are big debates going on online.
Look, one of the women who disrupted it, and people are excoriating her, she said she's proud of having a gay candidate and that he's made it this far, but knocked him for being middle of the road and speaking to a predominantly white audience out there and not really mixing it up with the broader community.
And that is the question, is Pete sophisticated enough, committed enough on issues across the board, or is he taking a very kind of safe, middle-of-the-road approach to life because he is presumably a target for his sexual orientation?
And he was able to reprise one of his favorite lines because he was attacked by Rush Limbaugh about having a gay husband and kissing him on the stage and all that. And so he got to say that line, the idea of the likes of Rush Limbaugh or Donald Trump lecturing anybody on family values, talking about my marriage has never involved having to send hush money to a porn star after cheating on my spouse. He's got that down.
Yeah, but I wish what he had down was they attack me for being gay, and Trump says, well, I'd vote for a gay. But meanwhile,
Trump did say that this week.
He did in response.
And then he says to Rush Limbaugh,
don't back down. Stand by what you said. Never apologize.
Right.
So, and Rush went right on the air to report that. But what I want Pete to say is, you claim you will vote for a gay person, but meanwhile you are destroying our lives and our rights across the board with your policies. And you're a big hypocrite. And vote for anyone you want, but let's talk about the policies of your administration. And I haven't heard Pete say that. That's what I want Pete to say about Trump and about our issues.
But the strangest thing I heard Trump say this week about all this, he told a crowd in Pennsylvania that he was impressed with Pete's fundraising ability, and he said, I dream about him. He said, it's true. Now, I don't know what you're trying to tell us, but he's obviously caught your fancy.
It's probably just Trump still trying to get some of the Republican gay vote.
In case you're interested, the new Gallup poll says that 76% of Americans said they would vote for a gay candidate. 80% said they'd vote for an evangelical. 90% said they'd vote for an African-American, a Catholic, a Latino, a Latinx person, a female, or a Jewish person. Less popular are Muslims, atheists, socialists, people over 70, and people under 40. Pete?
We're out of bounds on several grounds.
Yeah.
All right, so...
And by the way, the central issue, I love the fact that this week the Yale study on Medicare for All came out. A rigorous study of looking at what it would really cost and what it would save. And
well, if you want to see the best analysis of it, call up John Oliver's show on HBO last week.
Terrific.
Fantastic.
I could link to that, but I will link to this study from Yale.
I'll link to the John Oliver show,
all right,
too.
Let's put that down, John. All right, John Oliver. Okay,
yes.
All right. I have
that'll
to write
be
these things
so.
down.
Those links will be in our weekly show note. We promise if you sign up, you will get just one email a week from us, reminding you that the show is on and giving you a few extras like those links. Go to gayusatv.org and sign up for our mail list.
But you have Pete and others saying, Bernie and Elizabeth want to throw so many people off insurance. Well, 37 million people have no health insurance in this country, and 41 million have inadequate access to health care. And under the universal system, single payer, they say there would be a 13% savings in overall health care expenditures.
That's always been true.
4,400, but they don't say that. They say it would cost trillions and trillions and it would break the bank.
I'm just saying that for those who've been supporting this for decades,
yes.
They have always said, honestly, that it would be cheaper. And the right wing, which is funded by pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies and all of that, have been lying about this for years and are continuing to lie about it.
They think it would save about 68,000 lives. Maybe that's important to you. Maybe it's not.
Well, I like the fact that Bernie is sticking to his guns on this and saying...
He could explain it better.
But he does say... I saw him recently being asked about this, and he said... These are lies. It would be cheaper. It would save people money, and they'd have better health care, and they'd have more comprehensive health care because we'd include dental and vision and all that kind of stuff. And so I appreciate him sticking with that, and it's true, and I wish people would pay attention to that.
And I would also turn around when anybody calls this stuff socialism, say, should we get rid of Medicare too?
Social Security, should we ditch that?
They're working on it, by the way. By the way, that's all in the Trump budget to cut these things.
Yes.
Now, his budget is never approved by the Congress, but imagine in an election year putting this stuff out there.
Shocking. I was shocked.
But
evidently it's more, food for the base, even though the base is crazy to think that those are good policies.
Okay. Should we talk about the Boy Scouts?
Let's do, because we're tired of the presidential candidates. And, the debate tonight that we haven't seen may prove us fools.
Right.
Anything could happen that we don't know about yet.
Right. It's a strange world.
The Boy Scouts have found a way to attempt to minimize their losses in the sex abuse scandals of their employees.
So they're declaring bankruptcy just for the national organization, which is not where most of the money is, by the way. It's mostly in the chapters. But they've set up a dedicated fund, and there's the statue.
Now, is that homoerotic or what? That is a statue outside the headquarters of the Boy Scouts of America. And that statue is copied and standing outside of lots of Boy Scout headquarters around the country.
It's like an advertisement for underage prostitutes.
Well, I don't know how old that scout is supposed to be, but it seems to me that's quite a come hither stance. And the fact that they can put that out there.
He's ready for action.
That is.
Be prepared.
Talk about oblivious.
Well,
I was quite struck by that when I saw it.
All right, so...
And that picture ended up in the New York Times this week.
Yes, it did.
With this story.
So they're going to have a dedicated fund. You have to file your suit by the bankruptcy court's deadline in order to get some compensation.
Which is probably 6 months ago.
And what this prevents is that it means that everybody who files will get some compensation rather than just those who filed first. Now, of course...
But a lot of people are complaining that they're going to be left out and that this only covers certain kinds of people and not adequately.
See, we worked at the Hetrick Martin Institute, and one of the things that we had to do when we hired people was sort of screen them to see if they were potential abusers who were trying to sneak in. It was one of the things...
Any youth agency has to
do that, and you have to actually do all kinds of screening. But the Boy Scouts never understood the difference between screening for that, which they should have been doing, and they just thought, well, we're going to keep gays out, which they did for a century until recently. And anyway, one of the lawyers for the victims says that the number of cases dwarfs those in the Catholic Church. And there's a group called Abused in Scouting, which represents 2,000 survivors, ranging in the age from 14 to 93. Anyway. Okay, the Boy Scouts.
All right, back to politics in the states.
Yes.
We've been following, of course, the Iowa caucus stories and the fact that the Democratic Party in Iowa is run by Troy Price, former executive director of the statewide LGBT group, One Iowa. Well, Troy Price has resigned as head of the Democratic Party in Iowa. You may have known that, but we're catching up.
We hope that the Nevada caucuses turned out better. I'm not too confident.
Well, I think they changed their system a little in anticipation, but we'll see this weekend.
Right.
In Virginia.
Yeah.
Go.
They repealed its law against same-sex marriage. This is very important. You better get these things off the books before the Supreme Court says, no, that's fine, you can do that. And I'm a little...
what we're afraid of with the Supreme Court is that they will go back to a system that says states option. So instead of having a federal mandate for same-sex marriage being legal out of the Supreme Court Obergefell decision in 2015, it'll go back to your state doesn't have to legalize same-sex marriage and your other state can legalize same-sex marriage.
I think Windsor is harder to overturn, which won us federal rights, because who would have standing to challenge that, really?
Well, the federal government could go back in. Windsor said that the federal government law of DOMA, the Defense of Marriage Act, DOMA said that the federal government does not have to recognize same-sex marriages.
Says it does not.
Yes. But Windsor overturned that and said, yes, the federal government does have to recognize legal marriages. And if the states legalize same-sex marriage, then the federal government had to respond accordingly.
Yes.
But we're afraid that what will happen is the Supreme Court will make same-sex marriage states' option. And if your state, even if it is happy with the same-sex marriage legalization, still has on its books its old anti-same-sex marriage law, that will go back into effect if the Supreme Court overturns Obergefell.
And it's not just laws, it's constitutional amendments, which are harder to overturn.
Yes.
In Colorado, the activists out there, and they've got a gay governor, Jared Polis, and a very positive legislature, but it's a multi-year process, and you have to then put it in front of the voters. And the activists there are saying, should we really bother with this, given all we have to do?
Yes.
And I think you should.
Yes.
And same thing in Nevada, they are doing that. They already repealed the law in the legislature, but it has to go to the voters, and that's happening this November. There's going to be a vote on same-sex marriage.
I hope that will draw progressive people. Now, if they fail to do that repeal, that doesn't mean that same-sex marriage is going to become illegal immediately. This is all just in anticipation of a Supreme Court
Your marriage
vote.
would, if you were in these states where they have constitutional amendments, it would no longer be recognized. What are they going to do with all the married people?
Why would it no longer be recognized? The federal government has mandated that.
No. If they overturn Obergefell.
But that's what I said. This is in anticipation of an overturning of Obergefell. If Obergefell is not overturned yet, your marriage will still be legal until it is overturned.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But all right. So 63% of Americans now support same-sex marriage, but that's almost as many as say they don't want Trump as president. So I don't know.
It's probably again a swing state issue, not a national vote, because the point is it'll be state by state.
So,
all right.
Virginia also banned conversion therapy. Indiana blocked a bill to remove the ban and derailed a bill to raise. Indiana derailed a bill to raise the legal age to marry from 15 to 18. This is Handmaid's Tale stuff.
Those mature 15-year-olds should have a right to marry.
They do.
I'm kidding.
In Indiana.
In Allegheny, Pennsylvania, getting more local, they have become the 11th city in Pennsylvania to ban conversion therapy for minors. That's a good thing.
And in Oklahoma, a state House committee passed a bill to ban conversion therapy for minors. It's called the Youth Mental Health Protection Act. Apparently a long way to go to full passage.
Well, it has to go to the state house, then it has to go to the rest of the legislature, then the governor. So no telling how far it'll get, but we'll keep an eye on it. Meanwhile, by the way, Colorado is a totally pro-LGBT state after getting rid of Amendment 3 years ago. And they are now running ads in newspapers in Florida.
All over Florida.
saying, move to Colorado. We're much more LGBT friendly because Florida, of course, has no statewide law. And I think a lot of it also has to do with the fact that Colorado has a 2.9% unemployment rate, and they are eager to bring more people to the state.
Well, you saw this article, perhaps, about all these people in California who can't afford it anymore. And Colorado is one of the states they're moving to, and and Nevada, and Arizona,
and Utah,
all these places, and they're making them more liberal. And of course,
Idaho,
all those people mistreated in Puerto Rico after the hurricane moved to Florida. So this will make it interesting on the
diaspora can be effective all over the place.
Make sure you all register to vote. Make sure you register 3 or 4. I
have wondered whether we should move to a state that is less.
We could take over South Dakota very easily.
Well, I always thought we should live in Alabama, pretend we're conservatives, get elected to office, and then ta-da!
would get reelected.
Who cares? cares?
Bigotry is still being upheld on Staten Island. Staten Island is changing, but they have a Democrat in the House there. But not on St. Patrick's Day, where the parade committee has once again rejected the applications of the Staten Island Pride Center and the Gay Officers Action League. The organizer for the parade, Larry Cummings, said, "This is not a sexual identification parade." There is an inclusive St. Pat's for All parade in Queens that's happening on March 1st again. And for the third or fourth year, we can march on the Fifth Avenue parade on March 17th with lavender and green.
And continuing the theme of religious bigotry across the country, in Burien, Washington, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's a little south of Seattle, right next to the SeaTac airport suburb. Kennedy Catholic High School has forced out 2 teachers, one a gay man, one a lesbian, when it became public that they were engaged to their same-sex partners. Now, the school says, well, they resigned. Well, yes, they were forced to resign.
Yep.
And they're not happy about it. They were, of course, very highly respected and successful teachers there for many years. The community is in an uproar. Not good.
Well, and the students are looking at protesting.
Oh, look, there's a petition with thousands and thousands of signatures.
Which is great. I mean, that never would have happened before.
Yeah.
All right, in New York, there's a resident doctor named Chad Jensen. We have a picture of him. He is suing for anti-gay harassment by his bosses in the surgical residency program. And I wouldn't, there are a lot of these suits, and we don't always talk about them right away until they're resolved. But he says he was referred to as part of the ATM, or ass-to-mouth crew, by his bosses. And the other thing is, he says these doctors, who are the bosses, Asarian and Searcy, regularly made hateful anti-gay comments about patients and unscientific judgments that these patients' own lifestyle caused their illnesses. This is a cause for great concern.
Yes, it certainly is. So he filed suit, and we'll keep an eye on that lawsuit. Now, I am very interested in this article published in the New York Times this week, which we will provide a link to on our show note, our weekly show note.
Yes, we will.
It's called How to Make Your Marriage Gayer. Oh, good, you brought it in. Cute. Cute. They're trying to be cute.
Oh, big front page of the Week in Review.
Those are strange illustrations,
yes, they
and I don't know what they're trying to say with that.
Basically, it's basically about sex roles.
It's one of these compilation studies. They looked at a lot of studies and they put all the data together. And what they essentially, oversimplifying this, that heterosexual couples are sticking to traditional sex roles more, and same-sex couples are more open to inventing sex roles based on people's choice of what they want to do.
And that means that even in a heterosexual relationship where both of the people are working, the woman is still expected to do more of the domestic chores in the house. And it's often not shared as much as they are in gay relationships.
Now, this is not entirely new information, but it was put together in a kind of vivid and fascinating way, I thought. And one of the points that really interested me was the finding that same-sex couples spend more time with their children than opposite-sex couples.
In many cases, especially in gay male couples, I mean, where they didn't bear the children, they both really wanted the kid, and
unless you have a trans man, and that is certainly not unknown. That trans men are bearing children
occasionally.
Yeah. But it's really interesting. As I say, we'll provide a link, and I'd recommend you read it because it's saying to heterosexual couples, if you're unhappy, this might be one of the reasons, and maybe you could do something about it. Meanwhile, HGTV is way ahead of that. They did an episode on house hunters with a throuple.
Oh, right.
who are moving into a new house and wanted, we're consulting on that.
What is a throuple, Ann?
A throuple is three people in a relationship. It's not about polygamy as we've traditionally understood it, where you have a male head and then lots of wives and there's a real power imbalance. A throuple is three people of any gender descriptions who decide to form a co-equal relationship voluntarily and with full consent. And so one of their things was they want a house like a master bedroom, bathroom with 3 sinks. And this is hard to achieve. So that was evidently an issue. But,
well, I see that
it's not the first time I've heard a reference to throuples
I see
lately.
that Trump has let his beloved Stephen Miller marry a woman.
Oh my God, I can't imagine.
Who was the works for Pence? This
yes,
woman.
Yes.
All right, Katie Hill, by the way, the bisexual member of Congress who resigned after her abusive ex leaked intimate photos of her, and she was accused of affairs with male and female staff. Yeah. Well, she opened up in an interview this week about being sexually assaulted 4 times before graduating high school. And she said her status as a bisexual made her a right-wing target in politics. She said there's so much ignorance about being bi. People come up to her and say, well, you're married to a man. Are you still bi? She asked if there were male bi members of Congress, and she said, oh, there are more, bi members of Congress. And she said, oh my God, so many. Now,
Write the book, Katie.
She has formed a female-focused PAC to get more women elected in public office.
And another little catch-up footnote in St. Louis County, Missouri. Lieutenant Keith Wildhaber, the guy we've been following who had charged discrimination in the sheriff's office or the police department there, and who won a big jury settlement of $20 million and was promoted to lieutenant and put in charge of a diversity and inclusion unit. He has now reached a settlement with the city. So rather than the city going back into court or the county going back into court to challenge the judgment, they have settled on a $10.25 million dollar settlement. So that's the money he's going to get. The irony is that his lawyers were willing to take a settlement early on of $850,000. And the county said, no, we're going to court on this. We're defending it. You are not going to get any money from us. You weren't abused. Well, now they have to pay him $10 million. So.
Well, follow up on the University of Louisville. There was an LGBT studies course there, and this anti-gay guy came to it, passed out, put anti-gay leaflets all around, and stalked the class by standing outside. And originally they said, well, that's free speech, there's nothing we can do about that. Now they've reversed themselves, and they've said that a student who was not enrolled in the class...
Oh, I thought he was in the class.
No, well, it said a student not enrolled in the class is not allowed to do anything like this, and not allowed to have any more contact with the professor or any of the students, and they have posted a police officer outside the classroom for the rest of the semester to protect them.
Well, is it only that class? It seems to me if you want to do something with this guy, you ought to be following him around rather than putting a...
they're saying the standard is if you want to distribute stuff in a classroom, you have to be part of that class.
Okay.
That's what they're saying.
Confusing. We'll look into that more. Sad story out of Miami, Florida. 2 gay men kissing in a car, observed by some, I'm going to say thugs. I haven't met them. I don't know them. But evidently there were a number of them who then chased them, followed them, and shot at them. And one of the guys was hit and badly injured.
I think they were both hit. One of them was badly injured. And a stray bullet hit a lesbian who was just getting into her car with her wife.
Just happened to be a nearby lesbian who also got shot.
So the guy who we have the picture up of there, do we have?
That's Clive.
That's Clive, yes.
He was the one... I think least badly injured.
That's right, because they're not identifying the guy who was severely injured.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's mourn and celebrate the death of Mary Griffith.
The life. Mary Griffith. She lost her gay son, Bobby, in 1983 when he took his own life due to her homophobia. I mean, she was a evangelical fundamentalist and would have none of it, and he took his life. She went on to
Didn't he jump off a bridge?
Yes. Leroy Aarons wrote a book about this called Prayers for Bobby, which was made into a movie with Sigourney Weaver. But anyway, Mary has died at the age of 85 in Walnut Creek, California. She
repented.
She found PFLAG after Bobby died and was very, very active there. And I remember hearing her personally a couple of times, and she was terrific. She's survived by her husband and 3 other children and 5 grandchildren.
She was a great activist, and it's just tragic that it took the suicide of her son to bring her to that. But, you know, great for her to have then looked into herself and figured it out.
Yes.
We also note the passing of Fred Koch of the Koch brothers.
Yes, you wouldn't know.
He was the gay one.
He mostly contributed to the arts and history stuff and those things.
Unmarried.
But he was gay, and there's absolutely no mention of that in this long article in the New York Times. He died at the age of 86.
The New York Times has a sad history of being unwilling to talk about the reality of the gay sexual orientation, particularly of prominent people. Annie Leibovitz, they resisted for years talking about after her, Susan Sontag, Annie Leibovitz's partner. Susan Sontag, they wouldn't talk about her relationships with women until long after her death.
I wrote an op-ed piece for the Times in 1980 about the gay vote, and I cited Ginny Apuzzo, who heads the National Gay and Lesbian Task Force, lesbian, and they said, "How do you know she's a lesbian?" I said, "Excuse me? How do you know she's a lesbian?"
Because I didn't sleep with her.
They had to call her and ask her if she was a lesbian. Ginny Apuzzo. I mean, because they don't write about us, so they don't have any clips to say, you know. Oh my God!
Well, I had a big fight with the public editor about Susan Sontag's obit, and he was just. I think it was Bill Keller, and he just refused to acknowledge that they should have
Bill Keller was the editor. He wasn't the public editor.
I think he was the public editor for a while, but I may be wrong. I may be wrong. I apologize if I'm wrong about this. I had a correspondence with someone that went on for some time.
I remember this.
And it was extremely frustrating.
Okay. The gay dating app Chappie, launched in 2017, is shutting down. The remaining meetup apps now, for those of you interested, are Grindr, Tinder, OkCupid, Bumble, Scruff, Growler, and as Queerty noted, if you're kinky, Christian Mingle. I thought that was a clever line. Chappie will be folded into Bumble, which has 65 million people on there. Chappie only had 610,000.
I didn't hear a thing he said for the last minute.
Well, they know what I'm talking about.
I know, but I don't have to, so I'm ignoring it.
All right.
Rosario Dawson.
Yes.
Prominent actress and girlfriend, supposedly, of Cory Booker.
Now.
Cory Booker, senator from New Jersey.
They dated.
Presidential candidate. Well, lots of people say they're dating, and it is a falsehood.
Right. Well,
I don't know them. Yeah. I don't know, but there have been certainly rumors about him for a long time.
To bring up Ted Kennedy again, Joan Kennedy stayed with him during his campaign, even though she couldn't stand him.
Please. So all we're saying is that Rosario Dawson, in an interview this week, said, "I am a member of the LGBTQ community." Even though...
Well, she's never been in an LGBT relationship. She said, "I never did come out. That's what she said. I never did come out, but I guess I am now. She's a staunch supporter of LGBT rights.
Always has
She's
been.
got a new TV show called Briar Patch, and she operates Voto Latino to mobilize votes in her community. And her uncle is the gay activist Frank Jump, and they did an ad together for PFLAG like 20 years ago.
All lovely. I'm glad she's finally talking about it. And let's see what Cory Booker has to say about himself.
In Atlanta, the Metro Baptist Association there has ended a 110-year relationship, speaking of relationships, with the First Baptist Church of Decatur?
Yes.
Yeah. Over the church's, well, first they did same-sex marriages, and they appointed LGBT people leadership. It got a little dicey. So they were called in finally. Their sanity was questioned by the association.
Wait a minute. Which is the progressive church and which is...
The Decatur.
The Decatur church is the progressive church.
And the Metro Baptist Association is expelling them from the association.
Because the Metro Baptist Church here in Manhattan
No.
is
This is the association, not the...
Because they're very progressive.
Anyway, so they ordained a gay deacon. So they were told, look, you go quietly or we vote you out. And the senior pastor said, it's your deal, not my deal. So they're gone. And they're happy.
International news? Or do you have something else?
I think.
Or national or local things?
Let's go.
Okay. In Russia, our friend Vladimir Putin opined on same-sex marriage. As long as I'm president, this will not happen. There will be dad and mum. And they may put it in the Constitution.
I think he just hasn't met the right guy.
Even Donald?
Well, that's a bromance.
I think he would reject Donald.
Although, actually, it's kind of an S&M relationship. And in Indonesia, they have a bill now to ban homosexuals. They don't have an anti-sodomy law, although they arrest us all the time. They want to ban homosexuality and SM sex. And they say it will be the end of civilization if we support these things. Now, here's the deal. If you are one of these things, you have to report yourself and go for rehabilitation. And if you don't, or if your family doesn't turn you in, well, then you can be arrested.
Doesn't sound
Indonesia.
Good. Well, Indonesia is getting a lot of people in quarantine from China about the coronavirus at the moment. In India, a prominent gay man has died and is being lauded in India. Wendell Rodrigues, 59 years old at his death. He was a prominent fashion designer.
A minimalist.
An environmental activist, left a husband, Jerome Morel.
And a big gay activist, he was, yes.
And died of a heart attack.
Yep, much honored for his work.
Yeah.
Also who passed away was a guy named Donald West, a psychiatrist in Britain who wrote a book, Homosexuality, in 1955 as a plea for tolerance. It was very influential with the Wolfenden Committee that eventually decriminalized private same-sex relations. In 2012, he published his autobiography, Gay Life, Straight Work.
Well, you think that was early, but it also in the UK, in Yorkshire, it turns out that a diary, an extensive diary, thousands of pages, written 200 years ago
by a farmer,
Matthew Tomlinson. Well, they've been reading through this. It's taken them some time, and they finally got to the point where he talks about a local sex scandal 200 years ago.
A well-respected naval surgeon who was being sentenced to death by hanging for buggery.
So Matthew writes about this case and he says, you know what? If this is someone's nature to be homosexual, why should we think there's anything wrong with that?
Yeah.
Clearly, God made them that way. So maybe, if they chose it, they would be worth punishing.
He said it's evident at an early age. I mean, they're very similar to the diaries of Ann Lister around the same time.
And around the same place.
Yes. And
she was very nearby.
And in that series
Gentleman Jack.
In the series about her, the incident of the last hanging execution of gay men was 1835. Now this diary was 1810, but 1835, and that was a plot point, made Ann Lister's lover very nervous about. Of course, they didn't execute lesbians though, did they?
I don't know.
I don't think they did.
Gentleman Jack, in addition to coming back, is based on Ann Lister's diaries. These diaries have become a wealth of information.
And Ann will be interested to know that Tomlinson's farm is now
a golf course. You know what? I looked it up.
Well,
I looked at maps, and there are actually several golf courses in the area. None of them are famous golf courses, so it's a local golf course.
By the way, they still have the death penalty for homosexuality in Saudi Arabia and pretty much in Chechnya.
Okay, and a couple of stories about trans issues back in the UK and England. In Humberside in England, in sort of north-central England, a court said that the local police illegally went into the workplace of Harry Miller, who's an ex-cop, interestingly, to tell him to stop his anti-trans tweets. The court said this is inappropriate. You are interfering with his free speech rights.
Well, they said it was Orwellian, and they said Britain doesn't have a Gestapo or a Stasi, and but the Trans Media Watch group said they fear now it's going to be open season on trans people, and it is unfortunate that people express so many horrible views, as Mike Bloomberg did recently. But the mayor of London tweeted this week that trans women are women, trans men are men, made a nice statement about non-binary people, and you should see the people responding to that on Twitter.
Yeah.
It's hateful.
Well, I think there are people sitting around all day on Twitter because that's their entertainment, and they like saying outrageous things, and that's where they end up. But in St. Albans, England, a woman was convicted for aggressive online tweets about trans women.
But London is going to have its first Muslim LGBTQ Pride Festival on April 11th, a place to be announced.
All right.
In Argentina, the first trans woman to play pro soccer. Did you do that?
No.
Mara Gomez was signed by Via San Carlos in the first division. That's a big breakthrough. I told you about Indonesia. And in Canada, in Edmonton, a gym named Queerflex has permanently closed. It was shut temporarily because the staff was being harassed on Twitter and targeted on things. And so they've had to close it entirely. By a right-wing group.
Even though there are a substantial number of Trump voters and voters around the world who are putting a lot of these guys in office, I'm convinced that these Twitter trolls are a finite universe who have inordinate power to harass people with this kind of operation. I would like them to stop.
Okay.
All right.
AIDS news?
Sure.
Well, the Elton John AIDS Foundation, by the way, that benefit at the Oscars raised $6.4 million, and it was attended by two Oscar winners, Elton John and Bernie Taupin.
Headline.
And then, there's a new study out about how gay and bi men have higher rates of skin cancer compared to heterosexual men.
Sunbathing.
The lowest rate is among bisexual women.
Too busy to sunbathe.
Okay.
Sorry, that's a cheap joke.
Okay.
Entertainment news. Well, new headlines about RuPaul's Drag Race, Season 12, coming to VH1 at the end of the month on the 28th. Guest judges this year, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Who got about a half hour on The View this week.
Yeah, for better or worse. But she's taped the RuPaul show, and she called it a 100% peak experience.
She's got now talk about a lot of energy.
Pelosi did it last year.
Yes, I know.
And that was kind of cute. This year, other guest judges, Shaka Khan, the singer Robin, Whoopi Goldberg, Leslie Jones, Jeff Goldblum, Tandy Newton, Olivia Munn are all going to be, the guest hosts are ramping up as RuPaul gets more successful. And congratulations to Lily Tomlin.
Yeah.
Even though I think this is nonsense.
Belated.
She's 80. Footprints in Cement in front of the former Grauman's Chinese Theater on Hollywood Boulevard, April 17th. This is all part of the Turner Classic Movies Classic Movie Festival.
Okay.
So that's how that happened.
All right. A viewer tells us, we haven't seen it, but the Apple TV docuseries Visible out on television. It's like about a 6-part series about representation of LGBTQ people on TV. The viewer says it's worthwhile. So we're passing that along.
Remember when we had that great byplay going with The Soup on E a few years ago?
Yeah.
And Joel McHale, the host, would say, this week on Gay Yusa, a Japanese show strangely hosted by 2 white people. Well, then the soup went off the air.
Famous.
It was fabulous.
We loved it.
We did, and we'd go back and forth with them, and then the soup went off the air. Well, the soup is back, but they have a new host, a younger woman. I don't know her. I think we have to get in touch with their staff and say, hey, we're still here. Feel free to make jokes about us.
You're back, and we're still here.
Billy Porter is appearing on Sesame Street this year in his Oscar gown, which is so gorgeous, the Christian Siriano gown.
He knows how to dress.
55,000 parents wrote in supposedly to complain to Sesame Street for having Billy Porter in that gorgeous gown on the show.
It's produced by HBO. No, they don't care.
Tony Perkins said, oh, they're sexualizing kids, defund PBS. Well, in fact, Trump's proposed budget does defund PBS.
Always
but
does.
No one believes that's going to stand. Eric Marcus's book and podcast, Making Gay History, is now going to be a play briefly performed in New York, a sort of docu-play, acting out the interviews that he did for Making Gay History.
With some of the very early activists, many of whom are gone.
Before Stonewall. It's Making Gay History before Stonewall.
Does anybody get to play themselves?
I don't think so. February 28th through March 8th at the Provincetown Playhouse.
We'll put this in our email, and you should sign up for our email. You get a lot of extras, you get videos,
We have mourned the death of Howard Cruz, the late, great cartoonist. There are going to be a couple of memorials for him coming up.
Yes, they
March 28th at the Center at 6 p.m. on West 13th Street here in New York. And May 2nd, somewhere in the Berkshires, where he and his partner Ed Cedarbaum lived for many years.
On May 2nd, time and location to be announced. That would have been his 76th birthday. And the picture, by the way, was of Howard and his alter ego creation, Wendell, which we love so much.
Congratulations to Jane Velez Mitchell, out lesbian newscaster, used to be on CNN Headline News. She's coming back to TV with a show, New Day, New Chef, Vegan Cooking. It's going to air on PBS stations around the country and is available now on Amazon Prime. New Day, New Chef. I saw a couple of movies now available on DVD and VOD, or one of them I saw, Kill the Monsters. That's weird.
Was that any good?
A throuple of men moves to L.A. It's an allegory, comedy, Kill the Monsters. Worth checking out, black and white. And something called In Full Bloom, Transcending Gender. 13 trans and 2 gay actors putting together a play about trans issues in full bloom.
All this great stuff,
gender.
and yet Trump is president.
Shocking.
You know?
And we'll be back next week to talk more about it. I hope the debate was good.
Yeah.
I hope we don't look like fools for what we said before it. But we'll come back next week and grade ourselves, or tell us what you think.
We'll have Mike on.
Oh, that would be interesting. We doubt he'd say yes. Bye.